Welcome back to the Blacksburg Buzz. It's a bye week for the Hokies, so not a whole ton to talk about, but I wanted to take a minute and recap the season so far. Virginia Tech 3 and 3, three really tough losses, all coming in very different fashion, and three really fun wins where Tech just ran away with it, which they tend to do when they actually win the game. So, a very up and down season that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And just looking down the stretch, the outlook at the moment with this 3 and 3 record and how things are feeling on campus and with this team at the moment. So before we jump into this, let's talk about our video sponsor, Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, every matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online, the game starts here. So the Hokies, like I said, 3 and 3 record. You've got the loss to Vanderbilt to start the season, a win against Marshall, a win against Old Dominion, loss to Rutgers, loss to Miami, and a win at Stanford. You've got Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Clemson, Duke, and UVA left on the regular season schedule with potential for at least one more game after that, assuming the Hokies can win three more and make it to a bowl game. Now, just such an up and down season for this group. I mean, talk about the craziness. You've got so much off-season hype all summer, all spring with that spring game and how exciting it was to bring back basically the whole team and make a couple of big additions as well. You're so excited looking ahead to Vanderbilt, and then you get shocked in Nashville. Now, looking back, we know Vanderbilt is capable of a lot more than people expected. I mean, they just defeated number one Alabama recently. That is wild. You not only beat Virginia Tech, who was right on the edge of preseason rankings, but then you beat number one Alabama too. Vanderbilt is having quite the season, but a really tough way to start the year for the Hokies. You just get off on the wrong foot. You don't look great on the road at all. And then you can't close it out in overtime. Just a bad, bad loss for Virginia Tech. You want to get that one back. You want to play that game better because if you show up in the first half, you win that game. If you don't make a couple of key mistakes, you win that game. And that just gets you off on the right foot. You start things right in the new season, and maybe you're not looking at the same record you are now. If you win that game, obviously you'd be at least 4 and 2, but I think if you win that game, you probably beat Rutgers too. Just because you're in a better spot, you're feeling better, and you're probably not thinking that the season is so much of a step back from expectations. You get out with the win, and you're just on a higher note the rest of the year. I think there's a good shot that you're 5 and 1 at this point if you just start the year with a win at Vanderbilt. But we know that that's just not how that happened. So you lose to Vanderbilt. And then you beat Marshall, expected to beat Marshall in that home opener. A big game. You don't look great once again. You have a tough first half, but you make progress, and that's important. Then you go to Old Dominion. You finally get the win in Norfolk. It's been a while. Old Dominion, it shouldn't be, but it always ends up being a scary game because the Monarchs have shocked the Hokies a couple of times before. So you're never confident playing against Old Dominion, despite whatever the line says and whatever the spread is. You're never ultimately confident against Old Dominion because you see all those past games where you go, okay, the Hokies, big favorites to win, almost no doubt in anyone's mind that Virginia Tech's going to leave with a W that weekend. And the Monarchs shock them. It's happened before, but you get the win in Norfolk. Pretty big deal for Tech. And you're sitting at 2-1. Not too bad. You thought you might be 3-0 at this point, but 2-1, you can live with that. Then you lose to Rutgers. Brutal loss to Rutgers. They win on a late drive after the Hokies just storm back in the late quarters to tie the game. But Rutgers comes out on top. You lose another close game within one score. 2-2, leaving out of conference play. That's rough. And like I said, I think if you beat Vanderbilt, you probably beat Rutgers too, just because of getting off on the right foot and, learning from your mistakes. But it's a lot easier to learn from your mistakes when you still leave with the win. It's tougher to take mistakes with a loss than it is to go, hey guys, we scrapped together, we got the win, but here's how we improved. That's a lot easier than going, what happened? We made all these mistakes and we couldn't beat a team that went 2-10 last year. That's just tough to stomach. So you lose to Rutgers on one of those late drives. Then you go to Miami. You play your hearts out. Stripped away right at the end. You're right there in the game. You think you've got the W. And then the call on the field is overturned. Wow. That is a season ender right there. Just awful. Now you're sitting at 2-3, 0-1 in the conference, but you rebound against Stanford. You get the big win on the road, your first game on the West Coast in a conference game for the Atlantic Coast Conference. You're playing on the West Coast in conference. Very, very unique situation going on here in the ACC, but you get the win at Stanford. You rebound well. You look solid, play a great game, and you come out with a pretty big win overall. So not too bad. 1-1 in the conference, 3-3 overall. But those three games decided by less than 7 points each. You gotta win the close ones. Good teams win close games. And Virginia Tech just hasn't won any close games so far. 3 games by less than 7 points each. 14 points total differential in those 3 games. 14 total. 3 to Rutgers, 4 to Miami, and 7 to Vanderbilt. And that's only because they got the touchdown in overtime, so there was no time to answer or anything. 14 points total. That's just tough for a team. That is tough for a team, but you've got to bounce back. And over the course of the year, seen so much development with the group. You're playing much more complete games. You're getting started earlier, scoring in the first quarter, putting up some points in the second quarter. You're not just playing a good second half like you did against Vanderbilt, and that's important. You're developing as a group, and you're playing better football as the year goes on. That is a big step in the right direction. You're making less of those just nasty mistakes when it comes to clock management, the numbers situation with multiple guys with the same numbers on the field. But there's still some of that going on, but I feel like it's definitely improved a little bit. There's been some of that. So you got that development as well. But what I'm questioning is, why did it take so long to get here? Why did it take so long to get to this position? This is, in many senses, the same team on the field as last year. Most of the same players as last year. Got a couple of additions, but generally speaking, the same exact group. So why did it take so long to get into the season? Why did it take so long to figure things out with the same guys? That's just a big question that's been on my mind the whole time this season, is what was the difference between the end of last year and the beginning of this year? What happened to make everyone take a step back? They've worked their way forward. They've evened things up, but why was there such a dramatic step back that you had to build back up for? I don't know the answer to that one, but that's something that I've been thinking about for a while now. Why did it take so long to look like you did at game 10 of the 2023 season? So, looking at this season, looking at the record, looking around the ACC, I'm thinking maybe there's a possibility to make it to the championship game, but definitely not a great one. I don't want to misconstrue that. Definitely not a great one. You've already got that one loss, and so in theory, you lose at least one more game down the stretch. I'd imagine it's Clemson and or Syracuse, and that puts you at 7-5, maybe an optimistic 8-4 for the rest of the season, and that gets you at about 5-3 or 6-2 within the conference. So perhaps there's a possibility there, but I think realistically, you don't make this championship game unless you win out and a couple of these undefeated conference teams lose a few games. You're not going to make it at the moment with SMU up there undefeated. They need to lose some games. You're not going to make it with Miami up there undefeated. They got to lose some games. And probably Clemson is going to make it either way. I really don't think they're going to lose enough games to be out of it. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be Clemson and somebody else. Originally, looked like it was going to be Miami after the first several weeks, but the last two games, Miami has been pretty shaky, winning with some questionable calls back to back weeks on the last drives that have really been make or break calls for the games, and both going in favor of Miami. There's been a lot of controversy about that, but Miami still gets the wins, and record is really what decides everything. It's all based on record. There is no voting, there is no any subjectiveness to this. It's all record that decides who makes this game. And right now, Miami has the record to do it. They've got to keep winning, and they probably need to play a little bit better than they have been in order to keep winning. But at the moment, they've got the record. So, along with them, you got SMU, maybe Pitt, some decent teams that could fill out that second spot, maybe Louisville, depending on the outcome of this UVA game. I'm recording on Saturday, so don't have the outcome of that one yet. There's definitely potential for that door to open for the Hokies, but you got to see SMU lose. You got to see Pitt lose. You got to see Miami lose. And, you probably have to win out. I think there's a shot you can make it with two conference losses, but it's not a great one. And you already don't have a fantastic situation with the one conference loss. So you probably need to win out at the very least. I think you got one loss left in the tank to make it mathematically possible, but you're not feeling super comfortable about that because you got to see a couple other teams lose a couple more games. So, not an ideal situation for the Hokies, but it's not out of the picture because only that one conference loss. Rutgers and Vanderbilt are both out of conference losses, so they don't count towards that record, which is big. That can help Tech a lot when it comes to an ACC championship game. But like I said, it's definitely an outside chance, definitely something I wouldn't put my money on, but I think it's still mathematically possible looking at the rest of the schedule. You just need a lot of things to break your way. It can happen, but it probably won't. And so, along with that, you've got bowl season. I really think the Hokies are a bowl team. I can't imagine they're not a bowl team this year. If they play like they have been playing, they definitely get 3 more wins the rest of the season. There's no way they finish out 3-9 if they play how they have been playing. I just can't imagine that happening. Now, do I think they're going to finish with a fantastic record? Do I think they're going to win out? I honestly don't think so. Really worried about that Clemson game. Syracuse could be a tough one as well. They're looking pretty legit right now. So, a couple of tough games left for the Hokies that they really need to win to have a good shot at that ACC championship game. But I do think a bowl is definitely on the horizon. I would be shocked if that doesn't happen. I just felt like might be something worth bringing up, but 6 wins is a very low bar for this Tech team. If they don't make that, I would be shocked. I think 7 is probably where you're sitting at the moment. And I mentioned it in the schedule deep dive. I think 8 also isn't out of the question. It's just 9 is going to be really, really tough. And obviously, you can't go past 9, at least in the regular season. You can't go past 9 with 3 losses already. Maybe they hit 9 by winning a bowl game, maybe, but I don't think they get 9 regular season. I I just don't feel good about that Clemson game. I mean, anything can happen with Tech. Anything can happen with Tech at home as well. But when you're playing a great team like Clemson, I don't think you can bank on winning that game. It's just going to be a tough one. But all in all, a really weird, wacky season so far for the Hokies. I mean, you've got some weird losses, you've got some brutal losses, and some phenomenal wins. So just weird stuff all around. You didn't think Tech was going to be in this position in the offseason, but here they are, and they've got to make the most of it for the rest of the year.